All right, so welcome back everyone. So we were discussing about the query rules section when we had some technical glitch. So just to explain you the context, what we were discussing. So I was mentioning that query rules is a major improvement in 2013, considering that site collection administrator has got the power to define, whether some results needs to be promoted or some results needs to be shown as a result block, etc. So this means as an organization, as an enterprise, I have various site collection administrators who need not stand in line to my search service application administrator and create all those keyword queries or do something differently to get the search results appear in a better way and help users to search for the right content. So I was about to say one or show one demo that uh, normally in organizations this is the time where we will be submitting IT returns or tax returns. So there might be some questions about it, and if someone is trying to search it in their intranet portal, they will need some information associated with it. So in this case, I'm creating a query rule so that any information related to tax or ITR or any keyword which is having this particular query, I'm mentioning these three queries here, should show a particular set of results at the top. And I have mentioned that the query, if it contains any of this keyword and it matches that, and I've mentioned that it should uh, uh, contain those three words or whatever that particular keyword I'm asking for, and it should promote that particular result. So I'm clicking on add promoted results. Now in this add promoted results you will see three options. One is a title, and then there is to mention a URL, and then we have a description for that URL, and here you will mention render the URL as a banner instead of hyperlink. Now there was a feature called as a visual best bet in 2010, and which is no longer there, a separate visual best bet, but it is slightly different. You can utilize the promoted results capabilities to get this best bets visually. So how I'm going to do that is, say for example, I have uploaded one image already to my site collection images, and this is that particular image. And by the way, I'm going to use the renditions to identify the right size of that particular banner which I need to use, and I feel that this is the perfect one, and I'm going to click on slightly to change this and get a new rendition created so that the content is properly mapped. Okay, I'm gonna save this as a new rendition, and I'm gonna get this URL of this particular rendition, and I'm gonna mention this URL here, and title, I can give it any title, and I'll mention render the URL as a banner instead of a hyperlink. Now, if you are trying to directly provide a third-party site URL like your income tax e-filingindia.com, .go.in, or any other site, beware that your search results page won't display it as an iframe. That is not going to happen. So I've tried it in multiple cases; it never worked for me. Do let me know in case it works. And then the next thing is, of course, this is just about a banner which will appear. So let's see how this works first in the promoted result section. So all I have done is I've created a query rule where any of these keywords in my local SharePoint search result source, it will show me a promoted result. Now I'm going to go back to that particular PV Labs team site. I'm going to perform a search for the keyword tags, and there you go. So it's giving me a banner which says, if you're worried about tax planning, uh, check with our experts. But this is not showing any URL here. Now all you need to do is go back to the same query rule section and simply add another promoted result to the same query rule at the bottom, and just provide the whatever links that you wanted to add here. So I'm going to go back to the local SharePoint search results, and I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to provide this particular URL next as an additional promoted result. give it a title, give this URL, and this time I'm not gonna render it as a banner, and save it. Now if I go back and check for or search for the keyword, let's see how it appears. So there is a tick mark which says tax planning, and it takes me to income tax india e-filing.go.in. So this is a visual best bet or a promoted result which we can achieve with the help of query rules. Now that is just one small part of what query rules can do. Query rules has this query transformation option as well. So if I am taking the same example, I'll show you some additional options which will show you how to push it as a result block. So there is an option called add result block and change ranked results by changing the query. If I have a group of URLs, if I have a group of documents or links which are in different places, then I'll be able to put them as a result block and show. That is what this promoted result block will do. And if I want to change the sequencing or ranking of my result block, that's also possible with that. Now so I was explaining about tax returns query. Now this is ideally useful in case of the months of say March to June, and beyond that it is of no relevance. Everyone forgets it. So I can mention that this rule needs to be active only during this certain time range and publish it. So I'll mention that from say April end to June end, and I can mention after that just review this particular query rule whether it's required or not. So right now it is actively published. I'm going to click on add result block and show you some of the capabilities of query transformation. So this is the query builder where you can actually transform the query whatever it's gonna check back with the index. There is a basic, that is a sorting option, and then there is a test query where you can check for your search result preview, and this is where you can sort the results based on any property. So if you're wondering what these properties are, all of them are managed properties. As I mentioned, if you have certain crawled properties, you can map it to any managed properties and use it for sorting. And this, once you choose a particular property, you will be able to choose the type of sorting that you want, and you can have multiple levels of sort as well as added here. Same way, if you have to use this query transformation, it's possible for you to add based on the user who is actually running this query. So if I'm adding that, it will add the username with respect to the query. Same way, if I want to take it only from one particular site, it will show me that particular website, and I can test that query here, and if there are any relevant results, I'll be able to see that in the search result preview. So that's how you can do a query transformation, and you can add it in result blocks. So we were discussing about some of the UI changes as well as the powers that is added to the site collection administrator, keeping the multi-tenancy and SharePoint Online in mind. Now let's go back to our slide decks and just cover a couple of them more, and we'll see what all additional capabilities it can do. So we saw how easy it is to add certain query rules, and how it is possible to have a certain set of videos etc appear as a result block. Now one important thing which I mentioned was about the deep refiners as well as the deep links. So when I'm talking about refiners and deep links, you'll be able to see that architectural improvement, whatever we have gained from our fast search, has a great impact on it, which we'll see when we discuss about the logical architecture. So here it shows that whenever you're searching in conversations, the hover card view actually shows you the best reply. If there is something which is marked in the discussion as a best reply, it will go ahead and pick that and show you. So there might be a total of 52 replies in this particular conversation, but it understands those best reply or the ones which are marked as best reply, and it shows in the hover card. We saw the visual refiners, We saw the options to dive directly into the part of the document which matters most, and we also, this is possible with the deep refiners and deep links and contextual actions. Based on whether it is a library, then you can follow that. Now, another important capability that SharePoint 2013 provides to site collection administrators is the search portability. Say you are trying to create a production SharePoint site. Now there might be several things which you need to test based on your queries, based on the content that you are uploading. uh, Assume that it's a authoring site where you want to create those ranking models and test whether it works, and then you publish it through a staging farm finally to the production environment. Now in the production environment, you don't have to really go ahead and do all the rework. You can simply go ahead and put, you know, create a package of all this customizations or whatever query rules that you created in your search environment, in your authoring, or in your what we can say staging environment, and move it to your production environment. How this can be done is, you can go ahead and choose the configuration export option. It will create an XML file, and this will have the result source details, whatever the query rules you created, all your search schema information, and the result types, everything, and you can go ahead and import it directly back on your production environment. So these are some of the new site search admin tasks or capabilities which we were discussing so far. So a site collection administrator has only one additional capability other than a normal site admin, that is creating managed properties. Rest all are same. So this was not the case with 2010 or any previous versions of search. You will be able to request a local crawl, which is a major feature. So this is again done keeping in mind that whenever you are creating a new site column, etc., and you need to get it as a managed property, or you need to ensure that some change has been done, we are not sure or we don't have the control of when the full crawl will happen. A site administrator has the capability to go ahead and request for a local crawl of that particular list or that document library. And as I mentioned, it is up to a list level. This can be done at a site level as well. So create or override result sources either for remote locations or custom search. So we checked that option, how to add new result source. We also saw how to override result types and display templates. We didn't see exactly how to override them, but we saw the display templates and what all the three components or the three types of templates which will show a better search results. And we also saw query rules. Now this is the demo which we had already, user experience demo. Now let's dive deep into some of the architectural components of SharePoint. So far we have seen some of the UI level changes or an end user level changes. Now talking about its architecture, you will immediately notice that there are few components which are new in SharePoint 2013 Search. So starting with your content processing component, your analytics processing component, etc. are new. Now, one major change that has happened in 2013 is you no longer have a dedicated analytics service application or web analytics service application. Now that's clubbed along with your search service application. So whenever you provision your search service application, this particular analytics reporting database and analytic processing component will also get provisioned. So which means till then you won't be able to get the report of number of users who viewed a particular document, the number of times a document is being viewed, or various other stuffs. All those reports now depend upon your search service application, and hence that's why we mentioned that it is a core service application. Now let's quickly see what all the components here. The crawl component, which is there since the inception of all your search, uh, the scroll component, it has the role of crawling the content. So on the left hand side you will see all the content sources. We have file share, SharePoint, user profiles, Exchange, Lotus Notes, and Documentum, or be it any other component. It is responsible for retrieving the content that we are going to index, and it brings the content as well as the metadata associated with it and sends it off to our content processing component. Now this is content processing component, as you see here. Now this is part of your fast search. So the content processing component invokes the respective protocol handlers to this crawl component invokes the respective protocol handlers to connect to your various content sources, and it understands, okay, how to read a file share, or it understands how to go ahead and process the content from your Exchange server, and it provides that information to your content processing component. Now there are key changes which has started or happened to the crawlers. Is, of course, there is something called continuous crawling, which we will come to. Continuous crawling is a little better than your incremental crawling, because there are many websites if you're planning for hosting a SharePoint public facing website, or if you're planning for a SharePoint intranet site which needs very high refresh rate of the content being updated, then I would suggest, or we can utilize this continuous crawling capability, where every 15 minutes a check will be done on whatever the content that has been modified. Now how it is different from an incremental crawl is, an incremental crawl, if you have scheduled for every 15 minutes, and within the 15 minutes if the changes that is done is not completely crawled, then it will get paused and a new incremental crawl will get started. So with respect to continuous crawl, it understands that the previous crawl is still not completed, and it will wait for that crawl to end and then again go ahead and perform the 15-minute crawling of that content. So continuous crawl, of course, will provide you the best data, best refreshed data, but it will also cause a huge amount of performance issue unless and until you have planned for your search accordingly. Now besides that, there is one more important improvement which has happened in crawling. So previously, if you have one to many crawler components on a server in 2010, so this was the same diagram which we used in 2010, where you can have one to many crawl components, but instead of crawl components in 2010, it's what we call as crawl roles, and now in 2013 it's actually crawl components. The major advantage is we can have one crawl component or one crawl role to communicate with all crawl databases. So in 2010 there was an issue that if some crawl databases had items to crawl and others did not, you would end up in a situation where some crawlers will be completely busy trying to keep up with the changes, whereas other crawlers will be sitting idle because their crawl databases are empty and there is no way to associate one crawl database with multiple crawlers. Now in 2013 this issue is also fixed, so you will be able to utilize these crawl components in a better way, and the same host can be distributed across crawl databases. Now this means there is one feature that we had used in 2010 called as host distribution rules, where we can pick certain crawl components to crawl only a particular URL. Now if you had noticed in SharePoint Server 2013 search administration page, this host distribution rule will not be there. That option itself will not be there, because now there is no defined server or defined crawl database where this particular URL will go into, because any crawler can crawl any crawl database. So there is no chance of creating something called as a host distribution rule. Moving on with the content processing component. So this is a component which we got from the fast search, and it includes parsing the document. So whatever the content that has been transferred to it from the crawl component, it processes the crawled items and feeds this into the index component, and it creates certain links and pushes it to the links database. So that is what it mentions here. As it's shown, the link database is where all the anchor content will be pushed into. So say for example, if there is information about links and URLs, it will be pushed directly to your links database. And then comes the index component. So the role of index component is very straightforward. This is where all your crawled data lives, and it's fed by the content processing component to create the index of content and your metadata. And the replication, there is a slight change now. The replication happens, the index content between the replicas within the same index partition. And so you can have multiple index partition hosted on the same server, and still it will go ahead and replicate the content whatever that is created in that particular index partition. Search administration DB, you can have multiple search administration components. That is again a new change that has happened in 2013. So search administration component, the role is basically to take care of all the topology changes and save it in the search administration DB. Like if you are provisioning a new index component or a new crawl component, this information will be stored in the search administration database. And same way, query processing component. So query processing component is what is invoked when someone wants to run a query. Of course, it also does certain spell checking and thesaurus, and it determines whether it needs to uh, map it or try to connect to multiple index components and get that particular information, and stitches all the information whatever it receives from multiple index components and shows it to the front end user. All right, so with that we have completed all the components within search architecture. And now let's see quickly the physical architecture. And there are three types of architecture which we're going to take as a sample. We're going to talk about a small search farm, a medium search farm, and a large search farm. In case of a small search farm, I would say it's not a dedicated search farm, because you will find there are other applications also hosted in this. So in here there are four servers, four physical servers. This is host 1, host 2, host 3, and host 4, and 5 and 6 are the database servers. So in this three-tier architecture, this is the web front end tier, and this is again gonna host the search components. So here, if you notice, all the components has got a failover component between these two hosts. We have an application server which is query processing component is running there, and we are also hosting the index partition, and there is only one index partition which is index partition 0, and the replica is hosted in this server. And same way you will have all the components: crawl, query, index partition, admin, analytics, and content processing, all of them are running in high availability. In case of in case there is one server or one host goes down, it needs to ensure that the other server will be able to take care of that particular component. Now let's see a medium server farm. In the case of medium server farm, the size of the items it can crawl will be increased to 40 million items. So we will need a dedicated search services farm. You will see that there are dedicated servers which only runs your components like query processing and index partition, and there are two index partition in this case. So assuming that one index partition can actually, I'm sorry, there are four index partitions. So the approximate calculation is per index partition it can have up to 10 million items crawled, and the configuration of that server could be somewhere between having 4 cores of CPU and 12 gigs of RAM per application server. And this is what TechNet mentions for a medium server farm. Now if you see here, there are analytics and content processing component which are in a different server, and admin and content processing components in a dedicated server, but index components are associated, and query processing is also added to the same server in this case. And this is a dedicated SharePoint search farm. And if you're going with SQL Server always on capability, it's better to put all your search databases in its own server, so that it provides you with that the requirements for your IO on your search will be slightly different from your content databases and service application databases. So it's better to put your search service databases on a dedicated instance, and host that in availability group. So these are all the databases associated. If you're wondering, search admin, DB, crawl DB, and analytics databases. Now, same way, we're going to talk about a large farm. In case of a large farm, uh, it will take care of up to 100 million items. So when we say 100 million items, we obviously need 10 index partitions. So that's the main thing. So a small farm expanded to 10 times with 10 index partitions. So with that, we are coming to the last section, which is extending search. So search in 2013 is a very scalable platform, and if you actually notice the scale which, or the platform in which search runs, actually runs the enterprise search, the content by search, your personal sites, and any intranet sites, as well as any external facing sites as well. So I mentioned that for external facing sites, the features like your uh, content search web part will be of great help. So unfortunately, I won't be able to show you a content search web part in online, because right now it is not appearing, even though in February this was promised that this particular web part will be available for online or SharePoint online users. It's still not appearing in the app part section. But content search web part is something similar to your content query web part in 2010. By the way, we have content query web part also available in 2013, but content search web part, the only difference being that whenever someone issues a query, instead of directly fetching that information from database, the content search web part goes ahead and gets this info from the search index. So this actually helps improving the performance of your environment, but it has a limitation as well. Since it gets the information from index, it will not be up to date, so the refreshness will be slightly less or lower than what you get from a content query web part, because the search index needs to be populated after a crawl, and then only that information will get reflected whenever you are using a content search web part. Now,
Okay, Sarath, can you hear me? Are you there?
Let me try to call him.
Hi, folks. I think we have a small technical glitch. We are trying to get it sorted. Looks like the speaker has gone offline or something has happened on his side. So we're trying to get him back online. Just give us a couple of seconds. We seem to have lost our speaker, so we're trying to get him back. He should be sorting it out at his side, so just give us a couple of more minutes and we should be able to get the speaker back online.
Hello.
Yep.
Uh, s- all right. So some issue happened. I don't know. I got logged out of. I think it is my internet connection. I'm sorry for that.
Not a problem. I think you just have to share and then pick it up from where we were at last.
Yeah. So uh, I hope you can see my screen now.
Not yes, we can see you.
All right, great. So I was talking about the physical architecture of SharePoint 2013 search environments. So we're going to take three types of farms into consideration, starting with a small farm. And so a small farm ideally will have, we assume that around 10 million items needs to be crawled. And in this case, we don't need a dedicated search farm in such situations, mainly because uh, the amount of content processing that needs to be done can be handled by one index partition, and you can have other applications also, or applications mean service applications in collocated mode in your application server environment. So there is only one index partition, and you don't need a dedicated database instance for hosting your search databases. Similarly, we have a medium farm where we will have somewhere close to 40 million items. In such situations, it's better to have a dedicated search farm. So for every 10 million items, it's better to keep one particular index partition. So in this case, there are four index partitions that's created, and each index partition will have its own replica in a different VM server, so that even if one of the physical server goes down, it has a replica hosted in the other server. So in this case, you see there is a host A and host B mentioned here, and you will have the index partition 0 replica here between these two hosts, and index partition 1, which is again having replica like that 2 and 3. Now another important thing that need to be mentioned is, in case you are going with SQL Server 2012 always on, it's better to have the search databases dedicated on its own SQL availability group. uh, the key reason being that search databases will have its own IO requirements, and unlike your other service application databases. So you can have content databases with a different IO, a certain databases which needs to be part of your record center or document center with a different IO, and a service application DB separately, and search which will require more importance. Those search databases can be put in one of those instances when you plan for SQL Server always on configuration. Now, this is a very large farm example where we will scale up to 100 million items, and considering the same math of 10 million items, one index partition, we will need 10 index partitions, and we will have a dedicated search components for that. With that, we're going to talk about really quick on how it's possible for us to extend search, or what are the capabilities we have. Now, if you see here, search platform is widely been used across all SharePoint workloads, be it in enterprise content management, where we have those dedicated web parts which I was talking about, content search web part and content query web part. Now, till 2010, uh, there are many environments where we have seen that content query web part is widely used. It's very simple and straightforward. But the difficulty with content query web part was that every time you add that web part and perform some query or perform some condition, it's actually going to get that information from the backend database, which means a lot of performance related issues can happen. Now we have something called as a content search web part in 2013, which actually can do all those things what content query web part can do, plus it can actually do bring in those scopes. You can have query transformations. Everything can be done within content search web part. And the advantage with content search web part is it's not going to go ahead and hit your databases, but it's going to get that information from the crawled index, which means which is going to improve your performance when you're going with content search web part. Now, at least for now, content search web part is not available in online, but as per uh, Mark Cashman, the program manager for SharePoint Online, in February it is supposed to be rolled out in from February it is supposed to be rolled out for various tenants in SharePoint Online, and it should be ready anytime, and we'll be also be able to use that in SharePoint Online as well. Now, same way, I'm going to quickly see the complete architecture and overview of how search impacts all our workloads here. So if you notice here, those two platforms, one is on the dark green, which is Exchange 2013 platform, and your SharePoint 2013 platform, both uses the core search engine. And this search platform, um, the search core engine, which actually uses the OVA, for any OVA search, Outlook search that you use, it again utilizes the search core engine. And you will see e-discovery also part of it. So whenever I create a server to server trust between my SharePoint and Exchange farm, it's possible for me to go ahead and do an e-discovery from my SharePoint environment and bring in all those information from those mailboxes hosted in Exchange, as well as the link conversations which is getting archived in that Exchange server in as a e-discovery query in my SharePoint environment. Now, so search core engine is what is making this possible. And if you already know that all the intranet search results, people search results, video search, etc., is possible only through the search engine platform. In same way, any internet search, like the WCM portion which I was explaining, it's possible for us to utilize the content search web part, as well as the cross-site publishing capabilities. Everything is actually dependent on our search functionality, as well as the marketplace app search. Whenever you perform a marketplace app search, it is again using the search 2013 platform. So that's with the architectural overview, and it shows how important search is and why it is a core feature which impacts your intranet, your WCM, as well as various other components and workloads within SharePoint environment. So with that, I'm done with this session unless you have any questions. So I'll be available for next couple of minutes for answering any questions you have. So do let me know any questions.
Hey, thanks, Sharat. I think with the technical glitches that we had to create a new Hangout, so not sure if many people followed that. So we literally have no questions for now. So what we will do is, I think if you have your maybe email ID or a Twitter handle or a Facebook, ID that they can kind of come back to you if they have any questions, because this this webinar has been recorded and then will be available for on-demand viewing. So if people want to get in touch with you, maybe that would be good way to kind of ping you. So yeah, there you go.
Sure.
So just yeah. So thank you very much. That was an interesting topic. Search in the whole, I consider SharePoint as a ocean, and then this would interesting to see one component, going around the whole of the SharePoint and then trying to do so many things. Kind of interesting. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and then we look forward to many more sessions from you for Hangouts.
Thanks a lot, Kamlesh, and thanks a lot everyone for attending the session.
Thank you, and have a good night, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.